For those of you who don't know, there's something called SXSW, which stands by South by Southwest. It's an annual conglomeration of parallel film, interactive media, and music festivals and conferences organized jointly that take place in mid-March in Austin, Texas. And it began in 1987 and has continued growing in both scope and size every year. And so a lot of times, especially with horror films, they do an early release at South by Southwest one year, and then they release the movie in theaters nationwide, usually months down the line, next year, next 2 years, whatever. So this movie had premiered at South by Southwest in March of 2021, and it was released nationally in January of 2022. Now, this movie was not in theaters. This went straight to, I'm pretty sure this went straight to Max, because that's the only place I see it at. Yes, I was correct. It was released on January 27th on HBO Max. Produced by New Line Cinema, distributed by Warner Brothers. Now, the movie stars Jenna Ortega as Veda, Maddie Ziegler as Mia, Niles Fitch as Quentin, Shailene Woodley as Anna, Julie Bowen as Veda's mother, Patricia, John Ortiz as the father, Carlos, Will Ropp as Nick, who's a friend of Veda and Mia. Quentin is also a friend of theirs, too. Now, I see mostly good reviews on this movie here, and I will say that there's a part of me that has mixed thoughts on the movie, but overall, I didn't think it was bad. So here are the reviews that I see right here. Here's the ratings. Google users gave it up to 88%. Internet Movie Database, 70. Metacritic, 84. Rotten Tomatoes, 93. Wow. Pretty good for Rotten Tomatoes. Common Sense Media gave it an 80. Now, I'll get to how they break it down after I read the Google synopsis. That's how I always do it. This movie was directed by Megan Park. I'd say she did an all right job on this movie. Pretty good. Bolstered by new friendships forged under sudden and tragic circumstances, high school student Veda begins to reinvent herself while reevaluating her relationships and her view of the world. Moving away from her comfortable family routine, she starts taking chances with a series of decisions that test her own boundaries and push her in new directions. As she spends more time with Mia, they grow closer, and Veda slowly redefines herself through their shared experiences. Now, let's see what Common Sense Media had to say about this and how they broke it down. This one says, poignant drama shows impact aftermath of school shooting. And I will say this one, because of the various shootings that we've had, the numerous shootings, I should say, that we've had in the past few years, especially since 2018 with the Parkland shooting in Florida, I know that I can understand if someone had a hard time watching this, whether they personally experienced it or not. So I'm trying to think of how I can put this right here, because I got a little bit mixed thoughts about it. The best way here's one thing I could say. If you happen to be a person who has experienced that or know somebody who has experienced that, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't watch this movie. They don't show a lot of, so there's not really gore or heavy blood or anything like that. But I mean, if you have been through something like that and you watch this movie, I mean, it kind of just, I would guess that it would re-traumatize you in a way or kind of bring that back. I'm no mental expert. I'm no psychologist or anything like that, so I can't say for sure. But I mean, some people probably still chose to watch the movie. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 93%, so that means a number of people had seen it, and a lot of people thought it was great. I'm sure there are some negative reviews if I go through Google, and I wouldn't be surprised if I agree with some of the criticisms of the movie. I wouldn't guess that much of it has to do with the acting of the people who did it, but just in terms of the content and whatnot. So how strong are the positive messages in this movie? Common Sense Media says at about a 60%. Feeling grief is an emotionally draining process, and it requires empathy and compassion to get through. Communicating your feelings can help you make sense of tough emotions. Positive role models, 60. Veda and Mia develop a friendship after experiencing a traumatic experience together. Since they both understand what the other has gone through, they're able to show each other compassion and empathy and communicate their emotions to each other. Veda also realizes that she needs to figure out how to better communicate to her family and friends. Let's see. Violence and scariness. I mean, at about an 80% there is. It says here a lot. Sounds of a school shooting, including gunshots and screaming. Some scenes with blood. Keep in mind, this is like a drama thriller type film. Very emotional. So this is not like a slasher where you're seeing some maniac in a mask going around and assaulting and stabbing people or whatnot. It's not that. Let's see. Parents need to know that. No, let me skip that part. 31 kids commented on it, 7 parents. Why is it that always when it comes to the more adult-like movies, there's more kids commenting, but when it's more kid-like stuff, it's more adult commenting? Like, for some reason, I have a feeling that if I look up some Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network show on this site, you're probably going to have 80 parents saying something where you got 10 kids saying something. It's like, I don't know why it's in reverse like that. I don't know why that is. That's just so odd to me. I just find that to be funny. Now, in the fallout, Veda is an average high school student until a school shooting occurs and she finds herself latching on to fellow students Mia and Quentin afterward. Veda and Mia become particularly close, helping each other with their grief. But when Veda realizes that she's not handling her emotions in a healthy way, she struggles to find relief. So she started, scenes with drinking and drug use by teens. So yeah, she did some drugs. She drank a little bit just to, I guess, to kind of cope with what was going on there. Now, is it any good? Their review says 4 out of 5, which is 80%. Parents also give it an 80%. Kids give it a 100%. Based out of reviews of 31 kids. Wow. This poignant examination of grief and survivor's guilt makes an emotional case for gun safety by giving audiences a first-hand look at what happens to teens who experience a school shooting. The Fallout does a great job of showing how messy grief can be, including the moments of stalling out, making mistakes, hurting others, and feeling lost and alone. Veda is extremely relatable in a haunting way, especially since her character shows the devastation that a needless crime can cause. The film makes the most compelling case since the documentary Us Kids for why legislation aimed at stopping school shootings is necessary. Other characters, which, by the way, with that being said, and I'm sorry to throw this in here. I'm sorry to say this, and I can't help myself. I wouldn't be surprised if a number of conservatives, right-wingers, Republicans, people on that side, they look at this movie and they would call it woke or left-wing garbage because the characters are female. There's diverse characters in here. I mean, there's a black guy, there's a white guy, there's a white girl, and then there's Jenna Ortega, who is part Puerto Rican, I think she's part Hispanic or whatever, or part Latina, whichever. And it makes the case for why we should advocate for more things like gun safety, gun control, gun legislation. They'll easily look at this and say, it's diverse and it talks about guns, so therefore it's woke. I'm surprised I haven't heard that yet, but I'm sure if I dig through the internet hard enough, I might find something. Not that I feel like doing that. But other characters, including Mia, Quentin, and Veda's sister, Amelia, who's played by Lumi Pollock, or Pollock, I think. Is it Pollock? Yeah. Demonstrate the different ways that people can be affected by tragedy. And although Veda and Mia are the main characters, and their stories are convincingly realistic, you could argue that Nick and Quentin's stories are even more compelling. Nick uses his grief to become a gun control activist, echoing the experiences of the real-life students from Marjorie Stone Douglas High School. And Quentin saw his brother die in front of him, making him the only main character to lose a family member in the shooting. But his story doesn't get as much play as it probably should, given that he's likely going through the most intense version of trauma and grief among the key characters, and in fact, he's written as the most stable and the least affected of them all. In light of how many black people have experienced the effects of gun violence, it would have made more sense for the film to give Quentin a wider range of emotions to express. Instead, he verges on the cliche of black characters, and by extension, black people in real life, being more emotionally opaque and strong. All of that said, Fitch does a great job portraying Quentin and making him likable. Overall, this movie gives viewers a first-hand look at what kids across the country have tragically either gone through or fear going through at school. It drives home the point that no gun is worth more than a child's life. And you know what? With all this stuff that's been happening recently, I got to be honest with you. And I think I mentioned this in another video before. I don't know if it was the video where I was talking about what Republican Congressman Jack Bergman was saying about guns or whatnot, or maybe it was another movie or show I was watching that dealt with something like this. But I mean, people should kind of be aware of this stuff. I mean, not just in schools, but I mean, essentially anywhere. I mean, you're talking, you don't know, somebody could go crazy, bring something to a grocery store, gas station, movie theater, casino, college, church. I mean, just anywhere almost, really, to tell you the truth. And just throwing that out there. I mean, I think this movie did a good job of doing that. So in that particular regard, I give I'm still trying to decide what I would give this movie. I don't know if I can give it a perfect 10, because I think that's kind of puts it far, but I definitely would put it above I definitely would go above 6. I would go above 7. I think I would say that 8 or 8.5 is a fair number for this movie. Now, you might watch the movie, you might give it a 1, you might give it a 10. Because when you're talking about giving a rating on a movie, a show, a video game, a book, music, whatever it is that you're watching or listening to, I mean, it's all subjective, right? It's all opinionated. So your opinion might be different from mine if you watch the movie. If you've already seen it, tell me what you think of it. Tell me why you liked it. Tell me why you disliked it, or tell me why you thought it was boring or in the middle or just all right or whatever. So the movie's available to watch on Max. Now, I will say great job to the cast for this. Jenna Ortega, Maddie Ziegler, Julie Bowen, a number of them. So, well, all of them, as a matter of fact. So overall, I think the movie was pretty good. I think the ending could have been a little bit better, and I'm not going to spoil that. But check the movie out, and I have a lot more shows and movies coming your way. So, like and subscribe. I got more coming. Check out the movie on Max.